Intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Don Boland, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the December 23rd issue of the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first article I've got is China is making gains in tech, but holes in economy remain. In cities and small towns across China, two seemingly contradictory facts are simultaneously true. China is closing the gap with the United States for global technological dominance, and yet big parts of its economy are a mess. Locally pioneer electric cars zip past deserted apartment blocks. Factory robots run by artificial intelligence churn out products that our jobless college graduates can afford. State technology funds throw billions of dollars at money-losing startups, even as the national debt surges to unprecedented levels. The emergence of AI startup DeepSeek earlier this year showed China can challenge the United States in some of the world's most competitive technologies. But Beijing's gains are coming at a steep cost. With the state's heavy-handedness in directing investments, wasting colossal amounts of money, the hundreds of billions of dollars China spends each year on domestic technology also eats away at the money for rural education, reinforcing the social safety net and other programs economists say are needed to put growth on a firmer footing. There is just massive miscalculation that runs through the economy in multiple dimensions, said Lauren Brandt, an economist at the University of Toronto. There are simply too many money-losing companies with investments by local governments helping prevent weak ones from going under. Of the 129 brands selling electric cars and plug-in hybrids in China as of last year, only 15 are expected to financially be viable by 2030, according to the consulting firm Alex Partners. China now has more than 150 humanoid robot companies, a Chinese official said last month, warning against a glut in that industry. China's strategy is to boost self-sufficiency in critical sectors as insurance against adversaries cutting off access to foreign technologies. Leaders are signaling that the high cost of doing so are worth it, especially as relations with Washington remain volatile. U.S. limits on selling advanced semiconductors to slow down China's AI developments have added to Beijing's urgency. President Trump's announcement to allow NVIDIA to export the H200 chip to China is unlikely to significantly alter China's self-reliance strategy. The government has already urged big tech firms to shun some NVIDIA chips over cybersecurity and other concerns. China's spending on research and development jumped nearly 50% between 2020 and 2024, and by many metrics, it is becoming more innovative. At sea, China's Navy launched its most advanced aircraft carrier this year, whose electromagnetic launch system brings China closer to U.S. capabilities. On land, its factories are installing more robots than any other country. In space, China is racing to land its first astronaut on the moon by 2030, the same year as Tianzhong Space Station is expected to become the only permanent outpost in Earth's orbit when the International Space Station retires. Despite its advances, China looks vulnerable. Home prices are down 17% since the pandemic. according to the Bank for International Settlements, and uncertainty over China's economic future has many people pinching pennies. That has forced companies to cut back on hiring and left wages depressed. Per capita disposable income in cities is less than $700 a month, while in the countryside as many as several hundred million people subsist on just a few dollars each day. In Minyachang County, in the central province of Hainan, officials spend more on science and technology than on police. Between 2022 and 2024, Menachem spending on science and technology rose nearly 50%, even as government's revenue fell more than 10%. An industrial park for the robotics industry is in the works, while state investment funds in the area are taking stakes in tech companies. Yet some government workers aren't getting paid. In recent months, local teachers, sanitation workers, college interns, and others have been demanding answers from officials about outstanding wages through a public message board on Menachem government's website. In recent years, affected by multiple factors such as economic downturn, Menachem County has encountered unprecedented difficulties, the county government wrote in response to one message from a substitute teacher in September. It promised to gradually pay back money it owed without specifying when. Missed opportunities is a subhead. Government debts across China are estimated to have roughly doubled between 2019 and 2024, hitting as much as $23 trillion, including debts tied to local government investment arms. At the same time, productivity growth is slowly an ominous trend when the country's population is falling. The International Monetary Fund has estimated that state aid such as cash subsidies and tax breaks has reduced China's overall GDP by as much as 2% and cost around $800 billion in 2023 based on exchange rates at the time. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Giovini recently urged Beijing to shift its economy away from investment and exports towards consumption, kickstarting a new source of growth. In a city where many once buzzing restaurants are now half empty or closed, Giovini told Chinese journalists at a press conference to spread the word. It's patriotic to spend money, she said. Throttling back state support for companies would allow the market to play a bigger role in more efficiently directing China's money to where it is needed, she said. It would also free up funds to help address another fundamental problem in China's economy, a relatively thin social safety net that leaves many people focused on saving rather than spending what they earn. This next sub is digging in. For now, though, leader Xi Jinping course looks clearly charted. Instead of spinning China's economic model, the government has been determined to export its way out of trouble. The country's trade surplus topped $1 trillion in goods for the first time in the year through November, demonstrating the resilience of China's manufacturing ecosystem in the face of Trump's tariffs. The outlines of China's push were clear even before Trump first took office, while Beijing earmarking strategic sectors such as electric vehicles for state support. Provincial officials poured tens of billions of dollars into government-favored sectors. Much of it has gone to waste, however. One problem is that tech investments and state subsidies are flowing to sectors that aren't creating nearly enough jobs. 1 out of 6 young people in Chinese cities is out of work. Beijing is aware of the problems, though officials say self-reliance will remain crucial over China's next 5-year plan. This next article is entitled "The United States Job Market Hit a Wall This Year." The United States labor market is ending 2025 on a sour note. While companies didn't report to full-scale layoffs, many did trim headcount, especially later in the year. Many also stopped hiring. Fewer employees quit jobs. Wage gains slowed. The unemployment rate drifted higher over the course of the year and last month hit its highest level in 4 years. The number of Americans who are unemployed increased by more than 700,000 to 7.8 million. The U.S. economy has added just shy of 500,000 jobs so far this year, a sharp slowdown from the 1.6 million added in the first 11 months of 2024. The unemployment rate has moved up, mainly during the second half of the year. It ended November at 4.6%, the highest since 2021. A host of factors are at play. Companies spent much of the year juggling steady consumer demand with uncertainty surrounding tariffs and the impact of artificial intelligence on their workforces. The government took a hatchet to its payrolls. The long-awaited jobs report released last Tuesday showed other signs of a weakening jobs picture. The unemployment rate for Black Americans has jumped by more than 2 percentage points since the start of the year, a much faster rise than for other groups. That threatens to unravel employment gains made by Black workers during and after the pandemic. Economists say that rising unemployment among Black Americans is a potential warning sign for the broader labor market. Black workers are more likely to hold low-skilled or entry-level jobs, which are often cut first when the economy weakens. Younger people in particular are struggling in the current labor market, as many entry-level jobs face disruption from AI. The unemployment rate for teenagers ages 16 to 19 has shot up by nearly 5 percentage points since the start of the year. The unemployment rate for Americans aged 20 to 24, a group that comprises many recent college graduates, has also drifted slightly higher this year, though it eased a bit in November. Higher unemployment is particularly scarring for young workers since they miss out on gaining skills and experiences at a crucial time of their professional lives, making it more difficult to catch up later. Wage growth has cooled this year. As demand for workers has eased, employers haven't had to offer the same heady pay raises as in the years immediately following the pandemic. For the Federal Reserve, cooling wage gains are an encouraging sign that inflation remains in check. However, that is little comfort to workers who are trying to stretch their pay after years of high inflation. The federal government has led this year's job cutting as the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency quickly moved to downsize the federal workforce early in 2025. Rounds of layoffs, the deferred resignation plan, and others voluntary departure programs, including an early retirement push, slashed the number of civil servants in the federal workforce to its smallest in more than a decade as of November. Sectors that are sensitive to tariffs and swings in the economy, such as temporary health services, manufacturing, and transportation and warehousing, also trimmed headcount this year. And the tech sector cut jobs as companies accelerated investment in AI. There have been bright spots, though. One sector in particular has driven the lion's share of jobs growth in 2025. Education and health services, without it, the American labor force would have shed more than 100,000 jobs this year through November instead of notching gains. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This next story is an interesting holiday story. entitled Christmas Capital Sees Hard Times. Fierce storms keep tourists away from Leavenworth, Washington in its busiest season. It's no exaggeration to say this town runs on Christmas. The Alpine Village, nestled in the Cascade Mountains, 120 miles east of Seattle, transforms each December into what Travel Plus Leisure calls one of America's best Christmas towns. 500,000 lights twinkle downtown. Tourists flock to reindeer farms. The local chamber bills the experience as living inside a magical snow globe. This year, that snow globe shattered. Brutal December storms have pushed Leavenworth's economy into uncharted territory during its normally busiest season. A week before Christmas, its downtown, home to dozens of Bavarian-style buildings that adhere to a strict design code, was unusually still. Streets ordinarily packed with tourists lay eerily quiet. Parking stalls, a notorious bottleneck in the town of fewer than 3,000, were open. Even the famed Nutcracker Museum sat largely empty. Carolers meandered through town, drawing no more than a dozen onlookers as they sang "Angels We Have Heard on High" and asked shop owners whether holiday crowds might return. "I hope so," said one shopkeeper. "We all hope so." This was already shaping up to be a difficult year for a village relying on tourism. In June, a manhunt for a military veteran accused of killing his 3 children closed a popular stretch of wilderness for about 2 weeks. In October, at the peak of Oktoberfest celebrations, a forest fire closed a major highway funneling visitors across the Cascades. Then came the December storms. The winds arrived December 8th, were another busy Monday in a 6-week stretch that typically brings many of the town's estimated 3.4 million annual visitors. A walking tour guide leaned against a guest to stay upright. Garbage bins tumbled down the street. Next arrived atmospheric rivers, intense weather systems that broke levees, flooded towns, and killed at least one in western Washington. The storms dropped nearly 6 inches of rain in 10 days, more than the town typically sees all month, and melted mountain snowpack. Water crept into crawl spaces and living rooms and inundated the riverfront park. Uphill from the swollen Wenatchee River, 62-year-old Lisa Hart sat in her recently deceased parents' kitchen, watching friends drape a tarp over the roof. A tree had crashed through the house, feet from where she had been sleeping. "Who wants to come over here and stay in town when it's raining cats and dogs?" said Hart, a recently retired supermarket clerk, her hand still shaking a week later. The storms washed out a portion of U.S. Highway 2, the most direct route from Greater Seattle, where nearly 60% of the money spent in Leavenworth originates in severed access to a major ski resort. Washington's governor has since announced that the mountain pass, one of the main routes across the Cascades, will remain closed for months. The final blow, a 3-day power outage. The Village of Lights and its roughly 500,000 bulbs were dark for a weekend. At Bauernhaus, a German restaurant downtown, Nicole Dustin served a family of out-of-towners among her few customers last week, who had spent 4 days in candlelight at a hotel. Some restaurants discarded thousands of dollars in fresh produce. Others distributed perishables to staff or the community. "I've never seen something like this," Dunstan said. "It's hurting all of us." Ponderosa pines, towering more than 100 feet, crashed into pens at Leavenworth Reindeer Farm, a popular destination outside town. A crew of about 25 employees spent 3 days cutting up toppled trees and reconstructing fences. Farm manager Erica Bowie estimated cleanup costs at about $75,000. The farm refunded $170,000 in tickets for 3 fully booked days it was forced to close, she said. Last year, according to the Leavenworth Chamber of Commerce, 14 of the city's 20 business days by foot traffic were in December, a testament to why many call this a Christmas capital. This year, many question whether any December days will make the cut. At Kris Kringle, a downtown shop where it's Christmas all year long, one can find Christmas villages, Christmas-themed cuckoo clocks, Christ Mass-themed cookie jars, Christmas-themed table runners, deck the halls, tea kettles, and much more. Sales plummeted about 50% during and immediately after the storm. Manager Ashley Ross estimates. Stickers on the floor indicating the winding path of the checkout line went unobstructed. There was no line. That's unheard of, said Dayton Vesey, 30, surveying empty seating from behind the counter at Leavenworth Sausage Carton. Vesey typically makes $1,300 weekly during the holidays, he said. This year, that has dropped to about $500. A group of 9 serving bratwursts, kielbasa's, and beer steins had dwindled to 1 solitary staffer per shift. Still, commercial life is reappearing. More than 850 people booked reindeer farm tours the day the outpost reopened. Some hotels reported full occupancy for the weekend before Christmas. And the Squirrel Tree Resort, the first Bavarianized structure in the area, has offered free housing to those in need. Now turning to a national level, a new class of battleships will be named after Trump. President Trump announced that the Navy is to build a new Trump-class battleship, which will be the centerpiece of the president's vision for a new Golden Fleet. He also announced a new class of aircraft carrier, but didn't offer further details. The first ship in the Trump class of battleships will be the USS Defiant. Construction will begin almost immediately and would take about 2.5 years, Trump said. The news follows the Navy's announcement last week that it will commission a new class of frigates. Trump has for years advocated for revamping America's fleet of warships, which he has said are terrible looking and covered in rust. In his first term, he called for a return to steam-powered catapults to launch jets from aircraft carriers, in a move that wasn't successful, and complained about the aesthetics of the Navy's destroyers. He has been personally involved in crafting plans for the Golden Fleets, the Wall Street Journal previously reported. We're desperately in need of ships, Trump said. Some of them have gotten old and tired and obsolete, and we're going to go the exact opposite direction. Trump said the new battleships will be 100 times more powerful than any battleship ever built and would be faster than existing ships. The Navy could buy 20 to 25 of the new ships, he said. The new battleship will be an upgrade to the Navy's Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, which are the workhorse of the current fleet and which Trump has compared unfavorably to rival navies, according to a U.S. official and another person familiar with the discussions. The battleship name harks back to the ships with large main guns used until the end of the Cold War, but the new ships will feature a next-generation design. The president made the announcement alongside Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Navy Secretary John Phelan. The ship draws on work already done by the Navy and shipmakers to build a new destroyer, which is in the early stages of development, according to an industry official. Mark Montgomery, a former Rear Admiral who is a senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, criticized the Golden Fleet plan as exactly what we don't need, and noted that each new battleship will cost at least $5 billion. We do not need ships that are not optimized to provide lethality against the Chinese threat, Montgomery said, adding that the new frigate has zero tactical use because it will not be equipped with a vertical launch system or the Aegis ballistic defense system. That is not what these are focused on. They are focused on the president's visual that a battleship is a cool-looking ship, he said. Over the past months, a Navy team developed and approved requirements for the new class of large surface combatant, according to a U.S. official. The new ship will weigh 30,000 tons to 40,000 tons, Trump said, larger than current destroyers. He said the ships would carry nuclear cruise missiles. The ships will have the ability to add future weapons like railguns and directed energy, according to one of the people familiar with the discussions. A White House and Navy team earlier this year began planning for a new fleet that will be better suited to counter China, manage the Western Hemisphere, and deal with other threats, the Journal earlier reported. The Navy proposed the name Golden Fleet, following other similarly branded Trump-era initiatives such as the Golden Dome missile defense system he ordered the military to build soon after returning to office. Golden Fleet will comprise a number of large warships outfitted with more powerful long-range missiles, even potentially hypersonic missiles, along with a large number of a new small ship, the frigate. The new frigate will be based on the Coast Guard's Legend class national security cutter, which H-2's Ingalls shipbuilding division builds in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and will replace the Constellation-class frigate that the Navy canceled last month after years of delay. The Navy has 287 ships in its inventory, mostly destroyers, cruisers, aircraft carriers, amphibious ships, and submarines. And on an international scene, cyber powerhouse Israel is embarrassed by hacks. Israel is known worldwide as a cyber powerhouse, yet hackers linked to its biggest adversary, Iran, have pulled off breaches by using known vulnerabilities to attack institutions that aren't as well defended as the country's critical infrastructure. Israel requires a high standard of cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, such as its electric utility, but not for less important bodies and institutions such as hospitals, which have fallen victim to some of the attacks linked to Iran. Some current and former Israeli cyber officials and experts say Israel could better protect itself if the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, passed a cyber law that would expand the rules beyond critical infrastructure. The attacks largely have focused on leaking documents through publicly known vulnerabilities that can be exploited by scanning computer networks for weaknesses or by launching classic phishing attacks, analysts said. The simple attacks are repeated in large numbers, which helps increase the chances of success. In the past 2 years, Iranian-linked hacking groups have leaked hundreds of thousands of internal emails and documents from government bodies. Some particularly embarrassing instances included a data leak from Israel's National Defense College, in which hackers posted online the passport information of Israeli generals and officials from countries such as the United States and India. Other leaks include more than 15 years of internal Ministry of Justice documents and emails and gun license applications from Israel's Ministry of National Security, including applicants' military records. Such attacks have been embarrassing to some in a nation known for cutting-edge cyberware, including Stuxnet, a high-profile sabotage project developed by Israel and the United States that infiltrated an Iranian nuclear enrichment facility in 2010. Israel and the United States haven't publicly commented on their roles in the attack. Israeli companies also export cyber weapons such as NSO's Pegasus, which allows clients to take control over smartphones remotely to spy on targets. The military vaunted 8,200 units also is known for its cyber capabilities. In June, during the war between Israel and Iran, Tehran's largest cryptocurrency exchange was hacked and drained of more than $90 million, with a pro-Israel hacking group claiming responsibility. The recent attacks that hit Israel are what's known in the cybersecurity industry as hack and leak, in which a bad actor breaches a target's system, steals their data, and releases it online to cause reputable damage. For the most part, they are exploiting known vulnerabilities, said Ari Ben-On, an adjunct fellow at the Center on Cyber and Technology Innovation at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a Washington think tank. The Iranians don't have the ability to uncover totally new vulnerabilities or zero-day vulnerabilities at scale, he said, referring to a previously unknown security flaw in software, hardware, or firmware. Last week, the Iranian-linked group Handala leaked sensitive personal data belonging to former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, including his contact list and Telegram messages. Ben-Am said the hack of Bennett's phone probably wasn't overly sophisticated. The hackers likely executed a SIM swap, tricking a mobile provider into transferring a phone number to a SIM card the hackers control. A spokesperson for Bennett didn't respond to a request for comment. Israel has legislation that requires cybersecurity measures aimed at protecting infrastructure deemed critical to state security, but hasn't passed a comprehensive cyber law that would require other important bodies to adopt cyber protections and clearly defined who is responsible for oversight. Such a law could have helped prevent Iranian-linked attacks against targets, including Israeli hospitals, current and former Israeli officials, and cyber experts said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This next article is headlined, U.S. Move to Close Airspace Isolates Many Venezuelans. A U.S. pressure campaign to topple President Nicolás Maduro is stranding Venezuelans around the world, cutting off air links to one of the planet's least connected countries and compounding the misery of a beleaguered population. The fallout has been personal and immediate. Holidays canceled, families unable to bring medicine to aging relatives, and cash-strapped Venezuelans marooned abroad. On November 29th, President Trump said the airspace should be considered closed after the Federal Aviation Administration warned operators of a potentially hazardous situation because of a massive military buildup near Venezuela. Since then, more than a dozen international air carriers have stopped serving the South American nation. A recent near mid-air collision between a civilian jet and a U.S. military plane near Venezuelan waters further heightened concern. What airlines want to make sure is that we don't have incidents over an airspace where an airplane is attacked because it was mistaken for a military carrier, said Peter Serta, Vice President for the Americas at the International Air Transport Association, which is a global trade group known as IATA. Severing Venezuela's air links adds to measures the United States is taking to isolate Maduro's government, including intercepting oil tankers and imposing a partial blockade. The moves raise the risks of a retaliation or a miscalculation that could push Washington and Caracas into direct conflict. Venezuela's 28 million people are now dependent on an aging fleet of about 20 commercial aircraft operated by a handful of local airlines known outside the country, according to AITA. Those carriers are rushing to reroute flights, charging hefty prices to move passengers through neighboring countries and connect to their final destinations, say travel agents. Alejandra Cura, a Venezuelan marketing agent in Spain, said she bought tickets to Caracas months earlier, hoping to introduce her partner to the homeland she left a decade ago. Her cousins had planned to fly over from Colombia for a family reunion, with costly medications for an elderly relative with Parkinson's disease. Now the trip is off, and the family lost deposits for their trip to Venezuela's Margarita Island. It's unfortunate we had to tell my parents at the last minute that we're not going to make it, she said. After Maduro took office in 2013, the economy began a downward spiral. Currency controls that barred companies from repatriating earnings forced airlines to write off billions of dollars. Carriers from Delta to Germany's Lufthansa pulled out. In recent years, Venezuela's averaged about 15,000 passengers flying in and out of the country weekly, according to AITA. Traffic has plunged to about 1,000 to 2,000 a week. The flight disruptions are also upending essential cargo like pharmaceutical products and perishable goods, as well as aircraft parts that Venezuelan carriers need to maintain their fleets, said Cerda. Maduro says the airspace troubles are part of a psychological war to seize Venezuela's oil. Venezuelan authorities ordered national airlines to keep flying and stripped operating licenses from some foreign carriers that suspended flights. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has said the government is working to find alternative routes with Venezuelan carriers. Some 40,000 people have seen their travel plans affected in December, the peak season for the industry, said Gregory Barros, an aviation expert who runs a Venezuelan travel agency. Authorities have been able to increase flight frequencies to a few countries in the region, mostly to neighboring Colombia. And on a medical note, this headline reads, America's seniors are over-medicated. 1 in 6 seniors enrolled in Medicare's drug benefit were prescribed 8 or more medications at the same time. Wall Street Journal analyst data finds that they're over-medicated. For years, Barbara Schmidt's family feared an illness was behind a pattern of terrifying falls that repeatedly landed the 83-year-old great-grandmother in surgery with broken bones. Instead, Schmidt's frequent tumbles might have been tied to something else, medications intended to make her better. Schmidt, who lives with her husband of 65 years in Lewes, Delaware, filled prescriptions for more than a dozen different drugs in the past year, according to pharmacy and medical records. This isn't unusual for American seniors, according to a Wall Street Journal analyst of Medicare data. 1 in 6 of the 46 million seniors enrolled in Medicare's drug benefit, which pays for most drugs taken by older Americans, were prescribed 8 or more medications. In 2022, 7.6 million seniors were simultaneously prescribed 8 or more medications for at least 90 days. Of those seniors, 3.9 million took 10 or more drugs at once, and more than 419,000 of them were prescribed 15 or more drugs at the same time. Schmidt considers herself healthy. She still works a few days a week at a Marshall store, and she is a dedicated crafter who creates intricate birthday cards for her 4 children, 14 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren. But osteoporosis has made her bones brittle, while arthritis and back problems sometimes cause agony. Schmidt counts 9 different operations over the years, including replacements for both hips and knees. She has also suffered from anxiety and sleep issues, largely related to the pain. Doctors layered on medications to help. Among the earliest was gabapentin, which she says started about a decade ago for lingering back problems. The drug seemed to help with her pain, and she wanted to continue her active life, so she kept taking it, getting up to 300 milligram doses a day. For years, records show Schmidt also took diazepam for anxiety. The drug is better known as Valium from the class of medications called benzodiazepine. More recently, she has had prescriptions for hydroxyzine, antihistamines, sometimes used as an anxiety treatment, and methylcarbamol, a muscle relaxant that she typically took daily with a gabapentin. For sleep, she got trazodone, an antidepressant, although she had no depression diagnosis. Some of the drugs Schmidt took are on a widely used list of medications that might be dangerous for seniors. The guidelines maintained by the American Geriatric Society and named the Beers criteria after the doctor who first led their development suggest some drugs should almost never be taken by older patients. That includes Schmidt's benzodiazepine, diazepam, antihistamine, hydroxyzine, and muscle relaxant, methylcarbamol. Other drugs, the guideline says, still pose risks for patients with certain medical conditions when combined with other medicines. They warn, for instance, that seniors should minimize the number of drugs they take simultaneously that affect the central nervous system, including gabapentin. Among the seniors in the journal analysis who were taking 8 or more drugs, 3.6 million had prescriptions for at least one medication that geriatricians say elderly patients should generally avoid. Many patients, like Schmidt, were on multiple types of these drugs. Among seniors prescribed 8 or more drugs, 1.6 million got benzodiazepine, sedatives that appear on the Beers list. In addition, 568,000 of those seniors were prescribed gabapentin or a similar drug. Gabapentin can have sedating effects. More than 310,000 of the benzodiazepine patients also receive muscle relaxants, another type of drug that Penn's guidelines say seniors should avoid. The journal found 147,000 seniors took all 3 categories of drugs at once. Mixing multiple medications that affect the central nervous system can magnify their side effects, including leading to falls, says Beers. As Schmidt added more drugs with sedative effects, she began having regular falls. She shattered her hip after tripping on the edge of a driveway. During a family vacation in Germany, she ended up at a hospital after toppling down an escalator. Another time, she fell off a ladder while working on Christmas decorations, knocking herself out and severely bruising her face. Her family grew increasingly alarmed, but Schmidt refused to use a walker or a cane, blaming the falls on outside causes like uneven ground. Schmidt's recent prescriptions came from at least 5 different healthcare providers. More were affiliated with the nearby hospital system, BB Healthcare, including a nurse practitioner whom she sees for primary care and gastroenterology offices, an orthopedic surgeon who has treated her back problems and prescribed medications to help her with her pain, works for an independent practice. A BB spokesman said, it has reviewed its prescribing patterns and this November added a new electronic medical record that will allow doctors to view consolidated medical and medication histories for patients and deliver safer, more informed care. First Aid Orthopedics said it doesn't comment on matters of patient care unless it is legally required to do so. Pharmacists who work with seniors say doctors might not be aware of their patients' full medication lists. Patients don't always mention what their other doctors have prescribed when a history is taken, and specialists might not have access to a shared medical record. The journal analysis found that among seniors taking 8 or more drugs, it was common for the prescriptions to come from a large number of doctors. Some doctors prescribed medications to their patients at alarming rates, at times single-handedly ordering 8 or more drugs for a single patient. The journal found doctors who prescribed the most drugs were concentrated in rural areas across the South where chronic disease is prevalent. Schmidt's daughter, Deborah Schindler, who works in Maryland for the hospital system MedStar Health, thought her mom needed to go to a specialized clinic that focuses on seniors. I just knew it wasn't normal for her to be falling all the time. In March 2023, Schmidt met with George Henawa, the MedStar Systems Physician Executive Director of Geriatrics and Senior Services, as well as others, including a pharmacist who went through her medications. Henawa zeroed in on 3 of her prescriptions: hydroxyzine, methylcarbamide, and gabapentin. The drugs were likely a cause of her confusion and falls, he told her. They all worked somewhere the same way. Henawa says, combining all of them is a higher risk for complications. Schmidt was shocked. No one had previously raised the danger of her multiple prescriptions. A drug rundown such as the one received by Schmidt, part of a process known as medication therapy management, is supposed to be a requirement under Medicare. The insurers that sell drug coverage must provide the service. The federal mandate applies to only a limited subset of enrollees, said Schmidt. The journal analysis found that what are known as the comprehensive medication reviews mandated by Medicare didn't affect the average number of drugs prescribed to patients. A spokesman for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said the comprehensive reviews can identify many different potential problems, and their impact may not be reflected in a simple count of prescriptions over time. Schmidt says that after her 2023 appointment, she largely stopped taking gabapentin and methylcarbamide. She takes the hydroxyzine only when she feels stressed. She says she hasn't had a fall since and feels more clear-headed. Schmidt had earlier quit the benzodiazepine after experiencing withdrawal symptoms during a hospital stay and learning it was a controlled substance. I'm better than what I was, she said. Schmidt says she is still stockpiling medicines she doesn't take regularly, including the gabapentin. I'll hang on to it in case a time comes when I might need it, she says. You get old and you don't throw things away. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And this next article concerns Brown University. The U.S. reviews Brown after fatal attack. The Education Department said Monday that it is reviewing Brown University's security systems following the shooting that killed 2 students this month. Universities that receive federal student aid must follow certain security requirements. The department said it would investigate whether Brown met those standards. In the hours after the shooting, public reporting appeared to show that Brown's campus surveillance and security system may not have been up to appropriate standards, allowing the suspect to flee while the university seemed unable to provide information about the profile of the alleged assassin, the department said. Brown said last week that it planned to review its campus security and that it had a large network of security cameras. A gunman broke into a campus building on December 13th and shot 10 students, killing 2. He evaded capture while authorities released surveillance footage and asked the public to help identify him. None of the footage appeared to be from inside the building where the shooting appeared. Authorities discovered while the shooter targeted Brown, law enforcement found Claudio Nervas Valente dead on Thursday about 65 miles north of the Providence, Rhode Island campus. After escaping, Brown, officials said Nervas Valente killed Massachusetts Institute of Technology professor Nuno F.G. Ruro in his apartment near Boston. The Federal Clery Act mandates that universities collect and disclose information about campus crimes and security. The Education Department can fine or bar schools in violation of the Clery Act from participating in federal student aid programs. Brown said in a letter Monday that it would install new cameras across campus, and in the Barris Holly building where the shooting took place, other new features included adding new panic alarms. It said these measures were building on safety projects which began before the shooting. The Ivy League school is also appointing Providence former Chief of Police Hugh Clemens as interim vice president for public safety and chief of police. Rodney Chapman, who currently serves in that role, is on leave effective immediately, the school said. The school also said that it will commission an external review of the shooting, including Brown's preparedness and follow-up, as well as an external safety assessment of the campus. The letter was posted online and time-stamped 6:51 p.m. shortly after the Education Department announced it would review Brown. Scott Schneider, a higher education attorney in Texas, said it isn't unusual for schools to be reviewed for Clery Act violations after a high-profile incident. The next article is entitled, "The President Stops All Offshore Wind Projects." The Trump administration on Monday halted the construction of all U.S. offshore wind projects, a sweeping move aimed at hobbling one of the president's least favorite industries. The Interior Department said it has paused the federal leases for 5 projects in the works from Massachusetts to Virginia due to national security risks identified by the Department of War in recently completed classified reports. It is the most significant action the administration has taken thus far against the burgeoning U.S. business, which already has faced financial setbacks in recent years due to soaring costs. Today's action addresses emerging national security risks, including the rapid evolution of the relevant adversary technologies and the vulnerabilities created by large-scale offshore wind projects with proximity near our East Coast population centers. The decision affects Vineyard Wind 1 off Martha's Vineyard, Revolutionary Wind, which is intended to deliver power to Rhode Island and Connecticut, Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind, and Sunrise Wind and Empire Wind off the coast of New York. Shares in Danish energy company Ørsted, which is leading 2 of the projects, fell more than 11% on the news. Dominion Energy, the lead developer of the Coastal Virginia project, fell 3.7%. Ortel said it is compiling with the orders and was told to suspend all work on the outer continental shelf for the next 90 days and that the government reserves the right to extend the 90-day suspension. Ørsted is evaluating all options to resolve the matter expeditiously together with its partners. This includes engagement with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and other permitting agencies, as well as the evaluation of potential legal proceedings. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, a Democrat, said he spoke Monday with Bergen, who told him the national security concern was around ground-based radar being compromised. He said, "We'll try and get to the bottom of this as soon as we can, but probably everything's got to stop in the meantime. I just think they're making stuff up, and it's a really tough group to do business with." Dominion called its projects essential for American national security and for meeting Virginia's rapidly growing electricity demand. The growth is driven by the need to provide reliable power to many of America's most important war-fighting installations, the world's largest warship manufacturer and the largest concentration of data centers on the planet, as well as the leading edge of the AI revolution, it said in a statement. Republican Representative Jen Kiggins of Virginia said she was deeply disappointed by the news and had been working for months with the administration and Republican Governor Len Youngkin to try to protect the project. "I will continue to fight to ensure Virginia's offshore wind project is completed, especially since ratepayers have already paid for it." Democratic Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey called the action unlawful and said she was working closely with impacted states and developers to ensure the projects are completed. Trump's battle against the offshore wind industry has escalated since he returned to office. His first wave of executive orders included a pause for federal permits and leasing for wind projects on land and at sea, which plunged the industry into months of uncertainty. "We aren't going to do the wind thing," Trump told his supporters January 20th, twirling a finger in a circle to indicate the rotation of a turbine blade. "Big, ugly windmills, they ruin your neighborhood." You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the December 23rd issue of the Wall Street Journal. We read from the Wall Street Journal every Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Your reader has been Don Boland. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings, 24 hours a day, of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has broadcast almost 40 years of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.